there are curses, there is romance, there is... I'm so scared of Sarah J. Maas's brain. Were the main characters trolls? Absolutely. Hello, everyone. It is that time of year where I'm going to go through all of the fantasy series that I read this year. I don't know why I feel like I'm forgetting something, so if I look lost while filming this video, what have we got? We've got 18 series that I have read a chunk of. I might not have finished it. It might not be finished itself. However, there are 9 series that I read only one book of. So I can't judge it as a series, but I do want to give you some of my thoughts. So there's going to be timestamps in the description box. I'm going to kind of like rapid fire go through the 9 that I've only read one of, and then we're going to go into the rankings. Here we go. This is going to be a long video, so I hope you have a cup of tea or a snack or a comfy place to watch this. So let's just dive in. Quickly, starting with books that I have only read one of. Starting with Gilded. This is by Marissa Meyer, who is the queen of retelling fairy tales. She did an entire series that was the Lunar Chronicles, which I really enjoyed. It had Cinder, which was inspired by Cinderella, Scarlet, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, like all the big names were there. And so I feel like she's kind of used a lot of the popular fairy tales and now has turned to a Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Yeah, so Gilded is about our main girl who gets herself in a little bit of trouble. She can't help but like tell stories and tell lies. And so she finds herself at the mercy of the Fae King, I believe, who takes her to the fairy realm and gives her these kind of impossible tasks, a la Rumpelstiltskin. Right? There is a mystery involved with the realm. There's this mysterious boy who keeps popping up in her prison cell and helping her finish all of these tasks, right? So it's a Rumpelstiltskin retelling with fae and mystery, and there it is. I thought it was quite slow. It's going to be a duology, I believe, so I think it's finished now. But it was incredibly slow, and the ending was rather bizarre to me. I'm definitely gonna read the second one because I have to know how this ends. Like, I'm so intrigued by what on earth she's gonna do to these poor characters. However, as far as like a reading experience, I thought that the Lunar Chronicles was really fun pacing. Her other work, like The Renegades and even Heartless and stuff like that, I thought the pacing was good, but this one, it just felt very slow. So I'm not in a rush, but if you are looking for a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, I've got you. Next up is Defy the Night, which is a duology that is now finished, and actually thanks to my friend Susan, I have the second one with me. I just need to reread Defy the Night so that before I can start this. Defy the Night is about a kingdom where there is this mysterious illness, and our story basically revolves around this one girl and her partner in crime who break into the palace, steal the antidotes, and try and save the poor people who are not given access to the antidote or the vaccine or whatever. And then also we're dealing with the royals who are trying to deal with this, but it's really political in terms of this kingdom has the ability to make the vaccine, but they won't sell it to here. I thought it was fine. I thought it was well done. This is by the same author who wrote the Curse So Dark and Lonely trilogy, which I also thought was fine. It wasn't my favorite. For this also, I thought that the characters were really interesting. I enjoyed it. However, just at its core, she wrote this before COVID. I feel so bad because I think that had I read this, having not been currently going through a pandemic, especially I read Defy the Night like in the beginning. I started this year in quarantine. So, it was just like the wrong time for me to read this book. It's a touchy subject. I mean, talking about access to healthcare and people dying because of just where they live, their circumstances, etc., is a little bit tough to read right now. So if you're okay with that subject matter, I would give it a go. I haven't read the second one, but yeah, Defy the Night. After that, I read Violet Made of Thorns, which is going to be a duology, I believe. This is an enemies to lovers. It's compared to The Cruel Prince. It's about a kingdom where there is magic, but our main girl is a seer, which means that she can see the future, but she's kind of bad at her job because she doesn't understand what she sees, and then sometimes she just lies. Like if she can't come up with one, because she's the royal seer, they ask her to make these predictions and she's like, well shit, I don't have one. But so anyway, they're dealing with a curse. The prince needs to get married in order to do all this allyship. There's like I honestly don't even really remember the plot, I'm gonna be real. This was one of those books where I enjoyed the side characters so much more. I thought that the romance in it was forced and not believable. I think the Cruel Prince comparison comes from both of our main characters aren't necessarily like great people, and they like really hate each other, and that hate fuels their romance. I wasn't sold on it. I thought it was an interesting idea in terms of our main character being a seer that can't actually do her job, and then she ends up fucking everything up. But like I said, I'm in no rush. Next up, I read Witches Steeped in Gold, which takes place in a world where there are many different warring kingdoms, but 10 years prior to the book starting, one group, there was basically a coup, overthrew the rulers of the main kingdom, and now there's like a tentative peace, but it sucks to live in the kingdom because they enslaved or killed, severely punished all of the people that they overthrew, and they just kind of treat their citizens like not super well. I don't know how to explain it really. It's split POV, so we follow our main girl Jasmine, who is the daughter of the current ruler, and then we follow Ira, who is a prisoner who's been in prison for 10 years, who is a member of the group that was overthrown. Jasmine is working with an underground resistance group to overthrow her own mother, but she's not ready to do that because that would mean Jasmine takes the throne, and Jasmine's like, I'm not ready for that. So like revolution needs to happen, but like, can we wait a couple years? Then we have Ira, who's now out of prison, and she wants to overthrow the mom, obviously, but she wants her group to be back in power. They end up clashing, but also having to work together, but also like they don't want the same thing. I tried so hard to like this book, but I felt like the main character, specifically Jasmine, was just so boring. And then all of the parts that like could have made our characters more endearing, the parts where there could have been a lot of character growth, we like skipped over it. Like there were a lot of time jumps, and so it would be like, and now 3 months have passed and I've spent those 3 months being a great human and winning the hearts of everyone. And it's like, well, we could have seen that. Like that would have been nice. I really wanted to like it. I thought that the magic system was so interesting, but just the writing style and the specifically like one of the main characters was just hard to read, hard to get into and connect with. So I'm in no rush to continue this, but you can certainly give it a go. It was definitely like very poetic writing. It was beautiful, it was different, but it was just lacking something to make me connect with it, unfortunately. Next up, I read High Mountain Court. I'm going to be real quick about this. There is a world where there are multiple different courts. Each court has different witches, but one of the courts is taking over the entire world, I suppose, and is slowly trying to kill all of the witches, especially the red witches. And of course, our main character is a red witch in hiding, but she gets roped into this adventure in which they're trying to kill the king who is trying to take over and kill all the witches. I thought that it was fine for what it was. It was definitely like this enemies to lovers, witches and fae kind of story. Like it was fine. Then it like randomly became smutty, and then I thought the ending was like, we could just kind of wash our hands and walk away of the story. I don't think it needs to be a series. I've heard that the books in the series might follow different characters, but overall I thought it was fine as a standalone. If you're looking for something that's like in the Sarah J. Maas world vibe, you know, scratches the itch, but I don't need to continue the series whatsoever. Then, actually literally last night, I read the first book of The Bridge Kingdom, which so many people have told me to read. This is by the same author as the Stolen Songbird. which I'm going to talk about because I read that whole series this year. I'll talk about her in a second, but it is an enemies to lovers story about a girl who was raised basically from birth to be the bride of a enemy kingdom as part of a peace treaty, but her father specifically raised her and all of her sisters to be these like incredible warriors that are gonna be spies and infiltrate the kingdom and then, you know, kill the king or like whatever. She gets sent to the kingdom and wouldn't you know, everything is not as it seems. It hit every beat that it needed to hit, but I felt like it lacked some kind of spark. Like the thing that I love about enemies to lovers is like the yearning and I guess warring emotions, but I felt like that didn't occur. So if you're looking to read it for like the romance part of a fantasy romance, I thought that it was pretty weak, but in terms of like the story, it was fine. I thought that the world was quite interesting, the dynamics of it. I was kind of saving this book for like a rainy day because so many people had said it was great, and it just was kind of mid, to be honest. I will keep reading it because I thought that the ending was good. The ending was maybe the strongest part actually of the book. Yeah, it just didn't exactly deliver, but again, if you're a sucker for enemies to lovers, this is one that I've heard good things about, but I've only read one book of the series. Another series that I've read 1 1/4 books of this series, and that is the Magic Bites series. I heard about these from Elias, and then I heard it from one other person, and I was like, this is so strange because the covers, to me, judging a book by the cover, I would not pick these up. They look kind of like the cheap paperback romances that I wouldn't think to pick up because I'm prejudiced, I guess. But I read the first one and it was actually good. It was fine. It takes place in our world, but there's like this, the balance of the world is thrown off. So sometimes we will get these magical flares where all of technology will crumble and we can't use our phones, our cars, anything. And then the pendulum will swing and all of a sudden we'll have our technology back and we won't have any magic. And that sucks because then we have like werewolves running around and we can't fight them, you know? So that's technically like a big part of the world building, but I felt like I actually didn't understand it until I started reading the second book. So it's not like a huge deal, I don't think. We follow our main girl who is a mercenary, kill for hire. She technically went to school to be a part of the Order, which are, I don't want to call them like the super police, but they're like these trained warriors that are supposed to deal with all of the magical issues, right? But she didn't want to be a part of that because she doesn't like authority, basically, and she would have to be a part of this whole like system. She was like, corporate life, not for me. Until her guardian gets killed and she gets roped up in this murder mystery, which involves werewolves and shapeshifters and blah blah blah. It's like this adult urban fantasy. I thought it was absolutely fine. Like as a fantasy, it did exactly what I wanted it to do. You could feel like the authors really liked the characters that they were writing, which brings me to what made me love this series even more. I realized afterwards is that this is written by a husband and wife duo. They write the books together. There are so many. This series is really long, but then they have like a bunch of other series. Something about that just really warmed my heart. So it's definitely adult. It's got this kind of sense of humor that's definitely a little bit older. I felt it much more in the second book, but it's like these are definitely like middle-aged people because every time they wrote about young people, they were like, our main character was very like making dad jokes and they were not appreciated and stuff like that. So it's got heart, it's got character. And I thought the first one kind of ended well. It's sort of like a detective series in which I have a feeling that there will be kind of a crime per book. So I'm in no rush to read the second one because the first one wrapped up pretty well. So if you're looking for a kind of standalone that you could then continue the world, Magic Bites or Burns, I don't remember, but cute. Also this month I read the first book of the Sunbearer trials, which is an unfinished duology, and it was such a fun time. This was definitely young adult, borderline middle grade, I would say. It takes place in this world that's inspired by Mexican mythology, and so there's tons of gods, and then there's tons of like demigod. The book starts out giving you the whole background of kind of the creation myth of this world. And so then we flash to present day, and every 10 years they have to hold this kind of competition where all the children of the gods have to compete, and there will be one winner who gets crowned Sunbearer, and there is one loser who gets crowned as being the human sacrifice in order to like keep the evil gods locked away. Okay, our main character, who is the son of a lower ranked goddess, there's all these different levels of gods, and he's in the Jade quadrant, which is like, they aren't the heroes, they're just like the nice gods. Usually has to do with nature, just like peace and love kind of thing. So they're never put into the trials, so he's not really worried. It's usually like the gold gods or whatever that get put in there. But that wouldn't make a very interesting book, would it? No. I thought that the world building was really fun. As far as the action goes, like they had to do all these different trials. I didn't love the action sequences, but I just loved the relationships between all the characters. I thought that they were so fun and unique, and they sounded like teenagers. They were stupid sometimes. So I just really appreciated that. There are also a lot of characters who are trans, and they're like going through different stages of that transition. And so I felt like I liked that part of the story more than the actual like action and trials part. But I just thought it was really good. I really enjoyed Cemetery Boys, so I knew that I already loved this author's writing. So I'm definitely interested in the second one, and I can't wait. And again, I think it's more like borderline middle grade, definitely younger, but solid, excellent, helped refresh my high school Spanish. And last but not least, the series that I barely scratched the surface of this year, but if I had read more of it, I would have put this on number one. For the series that I read this year, and that is, of course, Gideon the Ninth. I only read the first book and then 25% of the second book because my mind just wasn't in it, but I don't want to bore you with talking about it once again because it was already on my list of best books. I can't stop talking about it. So good. This is a fantasy that has to do with necromancy, and we're in space, and our main character is absolutely batshit and just chaotic and wonderful. It is one of the funniest books I've ever read. It was such a good time, and I can't wait to read more of it, but it's one of those books that like I want to cherish and be sure that I'm really focusing on. So I'm giving Harrow some space. I'm not even going to tell you any more about what it's about because I've talked about it so much, and I just need you to pick it up. Please. That's literally it. Gideon the Ninth. So good. Okay? Now, to talk about the series that I actually either finished or read a good chunk of. I attempted to rank them. Here we go. Starting off with my least favorite, moving towards my favorite of the year. I'm so sad. This was ranked very high in 2020, 2021, whenever I read most of this series. I'm not going to finish this series. I read the 4th out of the 5th book. I will not be reading the 5th book. I'm so upset. And this is the Black Witch series. I adored the 1st and 2nd books of this series. We follow a girl who is raised in a very racist kingdom. There are all these different, there's like fae, dragons, and werewolf, witches, and you know, everything in between, right? There's every fantasy thing, and every single one of them hates each other. The werewolves do not mess with the witches. The witches do not mess with the fae. You know. And they all have these like absolutely ridiculous prejudices, right? Like, if you look a werewolf in the eye, they're gonna eat you, and you're not gonna like that, you know, whatever. So anyway, she is raised on a farm, doesn't have much human contact other than her brothers and her uncle. Her particular part of society is really like, I would say they're really religious and conservative. She has like reached an age where she needs to get married, and like there's this whole thing about getting married in their culture, and it's weird, but her uncle is like, oh no, I don't want to force her to get married at such a young age, she needs to go to university. And so he convinces her family to let her go to university to put off her marriage, right? Problem with going to university is that the university is where everyone goes, so she has to sit next to a werewolf, and she has to clean the kitchens with a nymph. So I thought the 1st and 2nd book were really good, especially in terms of the romance. I would say like maybe Cassandra Clare can do this, but like the yearning, I felt it in my heart. The third book in this series, I started to see signs of like, she's kind of dropped the reins on this one. And then the fourth book, the plot just completely ran away from her, and I'm so sad. I don't know why this has been stretched to be such a long series. It was supposed to only be 4. She pushed back the release of this book by almost 6 months, and then she's like, oh wait, it's not finished, there's gonna be a 5th book. Nothing happened in the 4th book except for every single side character, and I'm telling you, there's like 12 side characters that get full on like these relationship, forbidden love, yearning arcs. Every single one of them. We're in the middle of a war. It was just so upsetting and repetitive and sputtering because I'm so angry. I've reread books 1 and 2 so many times. So I would still recommend that you read the first 2 books, but then just try to like forget that she's continued the series, because I'm so mad. I feel betrayed. Next on our list, just a little bit higher, is the Malice duology. This was another one that I really wanted to like. This is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty and Maleficent. It is a sapphic romance. It's a duology. It had everything I wanted, and it just didn't deliver. The world is quite interesting. It takes place in a kingdom that had made this kind of peace treaty with the Fae, or like the magic people. I think they're Fae. And so this kingdom basically acts as like the buffer and the bodyguard between the rest of the world and the Fae. In exchange for their protection, the Fae gifted a few people graces, aka magic. And usually they're like beauty graces, and so you can like, it's like you go to the pharmacy and they give you pills. Like you go to the beauty grace and they can like magic your acne away or like whatever. But our main character, of course, has a not great grace, which people come to her when they need revenge or somebody silently killed off or like whatever. She does like all of the dark deeds. And all she wants to do is escape and live a life free from having to be a grace and doing all these horrible things around people that hate her, but still use her all the time. And then on top of that, we also have the royal family who is cursed. Basically, if their daughters don't find true love before they turn a certain age, they die, and they're on their last daughter. And so they basically just hold these balls all the time, and like the princess just has to kiss every single person that comes to the ball in order to find their, get true love's first kiss, right? Obviously something happens in which they cross paths. I thought that the first book had a lot of potential. I really liked the world. The princess was a character that like we've all read before, the monarch who really loves her people and wants to do good once she becomes queen, blah blah blah. So I wasn't as like super impressed with the princess, but I thought that our main character was actually quite interesting. This is like a prequel to Sleeping Beauty. So during the duology, our main character becomes the villain. And so the whole kind of second book is her in her villain stage, and it just wasn't good. I didn't enjoy anything about it. It just kind of took away all of the things that I liked about the first book. So this was one of those cases where the duology had a really strong start, and then the second book just kind of like... But if you like reading morally gray, borderline just morally wrong characters, give it a try. I thought the first one was good. Second one, you might like it, but it was absolutely not my cup of tea. That is Malice and Misrule. Next up, speaking of duologies that were not my cup of tea, that is These Hollow Vows, These Twisted Bonds, a duology that is a fantasy smoothie of every plot you've already read. And I know that people are going to come to me and be like, it's a genre, Cari. It's the tropes. Of course they're going to be similar. You're reading the same kinds of books. Hear me out though. I feel like you can write to genre, you can write to a trope and have it have its own flavor. But these books were like they just had no voice of their own. I don't know how to explain it. It was so predictable to the point where I hated the characters, not because of their actions, but because of the fact that they couldn't see what I was seeing. I was like, you guys are so dumb. I'm so far ahead of you. It just sort of felt like a waste of my time. Did I even explain what it's about? No, it's about a girl who lives in the human realm. Her mother ditched her and her sister and ran off to the fairy realm. And so her and her sister have to work as basically like indentured servants to this woman who is like, you know what, actually I can just make more money if I just sell your sister to the unseelie fairy king. And so our adventure starts when our main girl has to go into the Fae Kingdom to rescue her sister. In order to do that, the Fae King is like, I need you to steal something from the Fae Queen. And we just get wrapped up in some weird stuff. There's a little bit of the selection in there. There's some like Shadow Hunter, Parabatai stuff. There's Akotar. You name it, it's in there. But like not well done. I'm not going to spend any more time talking about it. I've made reading vlogs about it. These Hollow Vows. After that, really quick, this is a bizarre fantasy series. It's the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels and then the something League of Gentlewoman Witches. These were the trippiest fantasy books. So strange. It takes place in a world that I think is supposed to feel like Regency era England, but there's magic and it's the women have magic in this world and you either become a witch or you become a pirate depending on how you feel like your magic should be used. Witches and pirates hate each other. The first book follows the pirates, the Wisteria Society. They don't have ships. They fly their houses around and like try to kill each other. It was just so strange. I thought that it was funny because there was this great sense of humor to it. Some of the characters, it almost felt like how Gideon as a character is very chaotic. That's how these like the old women pirates spoke to each other, was just chaotic and like so dramatic and over the top and everything and quite funny. But in terms of the plot, I had no idea what was going on. And then I read the second one and it was even worse in terms of like I lost the plot fully. So it tries to be enemies to lovers. If you're a person who really needs a plot that kind of makes sense, skip. Next up on our list is none other than Crave. Yes, this was a series that I thought was going to just end my reading career. I read this going into it knowing that it was going to be a little nutty based on how many people recommended it and like the things I had vaguely heard about it, and it turned out to be even crazier than what I expected. I felt like it was a parody. I felt like it was a fun time. Oh, what a mess. So Crave is about a girl whose parents have both died in an accident, and so she has to go live with her uncle and her cousin who live in Alaska because her uncle is the headmaster of a boarding school. Turns out the boarding school, our main girl doesn't know this, the boarding school is for paranormal kids. So we've got vampires and werewolves and the whole shebang. The reason I say that it felt like a parody is it was so unserious. I have a whole reading vlog about it. You can watch it. The first two books were so fun to read because they were just absolutely bonkers. It felt like watching a really bad CW show. And then for books 3 and 4, the author tried to actually have it have a plot that mattered and, you know, people died and it is supposed to be quite serious, and that just ruined it because it was so boring, so long, so unnecessary. So I would not spend any money on this series, but if you're looking for a good time, if your library has them, if a friend has them and you can borrow it. The first two were just, it read like not good crack fan fiction, like truly all over the place. I can't explain it, but it was just an experience. So many plot holes, so many unanswered questions. What a ride. That is Crave. Ranked higher than Crave is the Stolen Songbird trilogy. This is by the same author as The Bridge Kingdom, as I mentioned before. I read this series during a 10-day quarantine. Did they pass the time? Yes, absolutely. Were they wildly predictable? Absolutely. Were the main characters trolls? Absolutely. So we follow our main girl who is finally going to move to the city to live with her mother, who is this famous opera singer, and she's so excited, and then she gets kidnapped. Who is she kidnapped by? The trolls who live in the mountains, because there's some prophecy about like a red-headed singer who can marry our prince and free us from this curse. So she gets taken into the mountain and is forced to marry this troll who, wildly enough, all the other trolls are hideous. They are described as being these foul, ugly, evil creatures. And then it just so happens that the one she has to marry is like the most beautiful person she's ever seen. I mean, so it's like one of those. I thought as a young adult fantasy, it was fine. My main issues were the pacing was really strange. So the romance, they knew each other and had so many interactions with each other that we just didn't see. Like so much time passed where they got to know each other and the whole like enemies to lovers thing happens and we don't really see it. It just felt very sudden that like the troll man was like, I love you. And we're just like, where? What? And then second of all, it was so incredibly predictable. So I felt like I was reading the book just to like get to the point where the characters realized the plot twist that I had figured out in the beginning of the book or like the prior book. And I felt the exact same way about Bridge Kingdom, where I was skimming just to be like, hurry up, characters. We all know what's about to happen. It was kind of funny because I hadn't read about a troll being a romantic character, but here we are. Not my fave. Maybe if I read it in like middle school I would have felt differently, but it just wasn't all there for me, and I think that that's going to be a theme with this author for me. The Stolen Songbird. Next up, I feel like I'm going to get in trouble for ranking this as low as I'm ranking it, and I'm really sorry. You guys know that I get panicky when I have to rank things. My feelings towards this, it's just in the middle somewhere, and I have to talk about it, so I'm talking about it now, okay? It's not horrible, it's not great. And that is The Bear and the Nightingale. This is a trilogy. I have only read 2.5. I didn't finish the third one. It is a story based off of Russian folk tales. It's about a girl. What is it about? It's sort of about Christianity spreading through Russia. As a result, the spirits and gods that they once celebrated and loved and cared for are being forgotten. The world is kind of dying. And so we follow a girl who can see all of these spirits and creatures. She's still really strongly connected to the natural world and all of those gods, which gets her in trouble. And the first book really centers around this story of the god of ice, or he's this winter forest spirit. How can I literally not explain this plot at all? There's a creepy priest who moves to the village. It takes on a bit of a Cinderella story where the father gets a new wife who is a little bit nutty, and I feel bad because she was introduced and I felt like she was supposed to be a sympathetic character, but she's just kind of not great. Things I liked about it was that it definitely read like an old fairy tale. It had kind of like a Grimm Brothers feeling to it where it was rather dark. I liked the kind of history and religious aspect of it as well. I thought the world was quite interesting. I just thought that the pacing was very odd. I thought that it was very slow, and I felt like some of the characters, because it did have that fairy tale feel, they started to become these kind of caricatures. Like the dad is the dumb dad who doesn't notice that his wife is like the evil stepmother, and then we have the evil stepmother who's just that, is just evil, and I don't quite know how to explain it, but it missed the mark for me. I know that a lot of people love it though, so if you are open, I think if you like Naomi Novik, how she writes rather slow, very kind of folktale, fairy tale inspired, very beautifully written, but kind of the plot is a little bit if you like that, I would give these a try. I know so many people love them. It just, for me, the pacing, the story didn't get me. didn't get me. Next up, similar to The Bear and the Nightingale, is a book that I don't know where to place on this list, and I feel bad ranking it in the lower tier. It's very much middle, and that is A Winter's Promise. First of all, the covers. Love the covers. This was recommended by a lot of you guys. It is a French series, so it's been translated. It was so interesting, and that's why I'm so mad that I didn't love it and I didn't finish it. I read the first 2 books, and I believe there are 4. I started to read the 3rd one, and I realized that I couldn't. Did I finish the 3rd one actually? Whatever it was, I realized that I just didn't want to know the ending. It started to take these very strange turns, and this is actually a book that people got really angry about how it ended, to the point where the author actually had to leave social media for a while because the fans were so upset by how it ended. People either really love or really hate this series, and I'm happy to be very middle ground because I don't know how it ends, but I absolutely loved the writing and the world building. So it takes place in a kind of post-apocalyptic world where there was some horrible thing that happened that split the world into these kind of like tiny pieces. They're called arcs, as in like Noah's Ark. Think of like the core is still standing, and then there's like these tiny little pieces of earth sticking out. And in order to like keep the human race going, they have to be really intentional with like marriages and stuff like that. It's kind of weird, but there is also a magical element to it. Our main girl has the ability to touch things and know everything about it, like understand everyone who's ever owned it, stuff like that. And so she works in a museum. She is very happy living her life there, and then she is told that she is moving to another arc in order to be married. There is definitely some kind of weird political thing going on in terms of this marriage, and she's also going to the most dangerous like Arctic warrior arc, so she's like very much not excited. The world is very just magical, like the way that it's explained, the way that I pictured it in my mind. It was so fun and bizarre and new, and I thought that it was so interesting and refreshing and kind of challenged the way that I thought about certain things. The issue that I had though was that on one hand there were so many characters. We didn't even see our 2 main characters together a lot, even though it does end up trying to become a romance. Then we start talking about like God. It has this kind of almost religious / like mythological feeling to it. The plot became a little too complicated for my itty bitty brain, I think is the problem. And like I said, the ending apparently was very polarizing. It definitely turned away from the kind of mystery character based plot to this kind of more philosophical God creation myth plot, and I kind of didn't want to go there. I would encourage you to give it a go, especially if you like kind of high fantasy that has a more philosophical feeling to it. But like I said, I just think my little itty bitty brain couldn't do it. But I thought that the first and second, especially the first book, was really great, and I will just live never knowing how it ends, and I think I'm okay with that. So that is A Winter's Promise. Next up, real quick, dead center in the middle of this ranking, my foot is asleep. Oh my god, hold on, I've got to pause. Crisis averted. Okay, so right smack dab in the middle of this list, in this ranking, is none other than Crescent City. This is an unfinished series. My god, who knows how long this is gonna be. This is a Sarah J. Maas creation, let's just say. Crescent City, similar to Crave, was sort of like a bad TV show fun time. This is an urban fantasy. This has modern technology. It talks about dating apps. Everybody's got a cell phone. It also heavily references reality TV. That can be seen very easily in all of the characters. Like it felt like we were watching a reality TV show. They were all very like bro-y, like even though a lot of these people are immortal, hundreds of years old, it felt very much like college dudes. It's also mostly like male characters. That being said, like I had a good time with it once I gave up on it trying to be a serious thing. We follow a girl named Bryce, who gets wrapped up in solving a crime that has rocked her world. This book starts off very traumatically. In order to help solve the crime, she gets a partner assigned to her, basically, which is this angel named Hunt. So it's kind of a enemies to lovers bodyguard trope. Overall, I just felt like it was a fun time knowing what I know now from having read the second book. I'm so scared of Sarah J. Maas's brain. I can't say anymore, but if you're looking for like an urban fantasy that's just like stupid fun, I really thought that it was fine. I thought that there were definitely problems. Like, in this world, the ruling party like enslaves and abuses the humans, and a big part of the book is like the humans trying to fight back and demand their freedom, and they're kind of shown as being kind of the bad guys. Like, we understand your cause, but you don't need to use bombs to do it. And like, I don't understand why our main characters, who are supposed to be the good guys, are not like very much on the human side. It's like they're oppressed, but they're not doing it right or whatever. Like, so there are like things that I have big problems with in the book, but in terms of just like shitty TV show fantasy, Crescent City, it absolutely ruined but simultaneously made my year. Thank you, but also screw you, Sarah. Next up real quick is a series that I haven't finished but I enjoyed, and that is the Graceling series. This was recommended to me so much and I finally read it. I know that it's a lot of people's like childhood favorite books. I totally understand why people loved it. I read the first book, Graceling, which is about a world that has magic. Babies will be born, and then a few hours, days, weeks later, if they have magic, their eyes will like change color and they will be carted off and given to the royal family to use their powers to aid the kingdom, right? So it kind of sucks to have magic in this world. Our main character is actually the niece of the king. Her power is basically she's a killing machine. And so she is used by the king to kill people, and she doesn't like that. And so we follow her on an adventure. I don't really want to go too far into it, but I thought that the actual world building was so good. I loved the romance. I loved the relationships, the friendships, all of the characters. I loved Graceling so much. The next book I read was Fire, which is kind of a prequel to Graceling, and it follows our main girl Fire, who is her name Fire? Anyway, it follows our main girl who is actually part monster, part demon. And so she also is forced into this situation where she has to work for the royals and do things that she really doesn't want to do. And I didn't like Fire as much just because of some of the content and like some of the characters. But that being said, Graceling was excellent, and I have heard that the third one, which is Bitter Blue, which comes after Graceling in terms of chronological order, apparently people love Bitter Blue. So I'm currently on team Graceling is my favorite, but I'm really excited to continue the series. Highly recommend Graceling. After that, wow guys, this is a long video. I knew it was gonna be long, but I feel like I've been filming for like hours. I have. Okay. So next up is A Magic Steeped in Poison. This is a duology that I wasn't sure where to rank this. Maybe I should have put Graceling above it. I'm not sure. This was a duology that frustrated me so much because I loved the first book so much, and then I really didn't like the second book. It's inspired kind of by, I guess, Chinese mythology, but it's really focused on the magic comes really from the tea ceremony. It was just the descriptions of the magic, of the tea, of every food that they eat. It was just such a beautifully written book, like every single detail. We follow a girl whose mother died of a poisoning, and it seems like her sister is dying of the same poison. Their family, they are tea masters, so they can do magic. even though our main character isn't technically trained as one. She grabs her sister's invitation to a tea master competition that the emperor is holding in order to find the new royal tea master. So she's like, I'm gonna compete, I'm gonna win, and then I'm gonna be able to have a meeting with the emperor and have him come to my village and figure out what is poisoning my people. Of course there's a mysterious boy. Of course, like it just was so good. It was so good. And then the second one just wasn't. Just because of the way that the story went, we had to leave all of the details that I loved from the first book behind. However, the second one was really more like action based, and I tend to not be the biggest fan of like lots of action. I'm a much more character based gal. So if you do like that, like just a lot of battle scenes and running around, give it a go, because I'm really excited for everything that this author continues to write. It was just such a letdown. That was A Magic Steeped in Poison. Highly recommend the first book. Highly recommend the first book. Okay, now we've reached the final book that is in the tier in which I have complaints. I would say anything after this, no notes. This series that I'm going to talk about is the Awakens series. When I tell you I ate this series up, oh my god, it's 5 books long, and I think I read it in like 3 days or something insane. They're very quick to read. They're all on Kindle Unlimited if you have it, and it's by the same author who does the Married to Magic series. So if you read Deal with the Elf King, anything like that, it's the same author. And I think that the writing of the Awakens is so much better than her Married to Magic series. So if that turned you off, maybe think again. The Awakens series follows a girl who is just a little librarian. That's all she wants to do. She doesn't have any magic. Our story starts with our girl working in the library, and she hears this kind of chaos coming in the front gates of the kingdom. So she looks out the window and she sees that the army is coming back and they are bringing in an injured body. Who is it? The prince is injured, and she had just had a recent run-in with the prince, who was like hella charming. She fell off of a ladder in the library and he caught her. Like, they had a moment. And so when the guards come into the library and they're like, we need you guys to research all of these different poisons so that we can save the prince, our girl is like, oh, I'm saving this prince. He's a hottie. I have a little crush. I'm gonna save this guy. So she goes headfirst into research, and she ends up getting summoned to the palace because of her research, and things just go on from there. She gets roped into a war. I thought the first 3 books were exactly what I wanted. It's an enemies to lovers. It's got pretty solid world building. I really enjoyed that. It had side characters that I loved, but they didn't overshadow the main characters. It had everything that I wanted in the first 3, and then I felt like it could have ended. The last 2 books of the series are just, it just felt like she was stretching it out so that she could write 5 books instead of 3. However, that being said, I thought that the beginning of the story was so strong and so fun. So if you are looking for that, just a new fantasy world, I thought it was a really good time. The Awakens series, there it is. Okay, we're entering the top of the list. The next series is one that I read very recently, and it's not finished, which is a struggle, but it is Nocturna. This is a Latin-inspired fantasy, so a lot of it is actually in Spanish. Like, all of the magic is in Spanish, but a lot of basically the cuss words and the insults are in Spanish. Having read this right after the Sunbearer trials as well, which also incorporates a lot of Spanish, my inner dialogue, you know when you watch a TV series and the characters have an accent and then your inner voice starts to have that accent? My inner voice started cussing in Spanish. So, but Nocturna is about... Nocturna follows 2 characters. Our first character is named Alfie, and he is the prince of a kingdom that just lost their crown prince. So his older brother was assassinated. He doesn't believe that his brother was killed, and so his part of the story is really him trying to track down any kind of magic that could reveal how to save his brother. So he's like traveling the world. He just came back and now he's going to all these gambling dens in order to win these like spell books and stuff like that. So that's Alfie's deal. And then we have our girl Finn, who is a thief. And our main characters meet when they both show up at the same card game and they both really want to win those books. I really enjoyed this series. I think that the second book is much stronger. It was just really beautifully written. Like I found myself underlining so many lines, but I also loved the characters, the relationship, a lot of themes that are touched upon, just kind of the character growth. In terms of the plot, I thought that my main complaint about this series is just that the action scenes are really short. Like there will be things that can like completely change how the plot goes and they happen so quickly, which I know that in this video I have said I'm not like the biggest fan of action scenes, but this one I almost wanted more action simply because the pacing just felt a little bit strange. So that's really my only issue, and I think that in the second book it got a lot better. My issue with the second book is that there is a redheaded character that one of the characters doesn't like, and so whenever we're in their point of view, they're really not nice, specifically about her hair. Out of all the shades of hair, redheads get so much shit. Why did you have to pick on us even more? Because I feel like you normally don't get characters consistently making fun of physical features. So that was just a little bit rough for me. I got over it. I would definitely read Nocturna and Occulta. Both of them end on cliffhangers. Well, do they? Well, Occulta, the second one, is very much a cliffhanger, and I don't know when the next book will come out, so I'm a little bit stressed about that, but overall I would recommend it. Nocturna. Next, I finally read Strange the Dreamer. I believe it was last year, if you watched that video, I ranked Daughter of Smoke and Bone as one of my favorite series of the year. It is also by this author. I love her writing style. Oh my god, the worlds that she creates, the worlds may or may not be connected. So if you've read Strange the Dreamer and you liked it and you haven't read Daughter of Smoke and Bone, I'm just saying you might want to. Strange the Dreamer, it is split POV. We follow a boy who was kind of in like an orphanage, and he ends up getting sort of adopted by the people who work at the library because he's there all the time. And so he grows up working in the library and he's just obsessed with stories. That's why they call him the dreamer, because he's always just, thinking of fantasy and stories, and his head's in the clouds, and he believes in all of these fairy tales, right? And one of the main stories that he's obsessed with is about this lost city called Weep. When the opportunity arises for them to go to this lost city, he does everything in his power to make sure that he is along for the adventure. Our other point of view is a girl who is trapped in this kind of castle in the sky with her half siblings and cousins or whatever. And she has a very interesting power. All of the siblings that she lives with have powers. And of course, these characters' paths cross eventually. And how do I can't say more. I won't say more. But I thought that it was so good, so beautiful, very dark. There is a lot of talk of rape. And I would be very aware of that before going into it. This author is very good at writing characters that deal with trauma in various ways. I don't know, just helps you empathize and understand where people are coming from, even if they're doing horrific things and stuff like that. And I just thought it was great. I do, however, I feel like people talk about Strange the Dreamer as like their favorite book of all time, and I wouldn't go that far. I think that for me, I sort of loved A Daughter of Smoke and Bone a little bit more, but I do think that Strange the Dreamer was a really beautiful duology. Like I said, very dark, please be aware, but absolutely swept me away. I thought that the magic, the mythology to it. The world building was absolutely beautiful. So that is Strange the Dreamer. I think it's Laini Taylor. I don't know how to pronounce her name. 2 years in a row in my top. So good work, girl. This video is long. I have gone through 2 camera batteries. Top 3.5. Coming in at number 3.5 is the Kiss of Deception trilogy and the Dance of Thieves duology. I'm combining them here. Sorry, not sorry. I read the Dance of Thieves duology, which is the Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves, earlier in the year, and I really enjoyed it. It was a short but sweet enemies to lovers story that involves a thief that has to go into a kingdom in order to steal something from the royals, and of course gets caught and has to pull some savvy spy maneuvers, and it was great. I thought that the second book in the series was much stronger than the first, so definitely continue the duology if you felt meh about the first one. And my issue with the first one was that I felt a little confused about the world. You get kind of thrown into it, and I felt like the author expected us to know about the world. Because the Kiss of Deception trilogy comes before the duology. So it's sort of like reading Six of Crows before Shadow and Bone. You can do it, but you might be a little confused. So if you just want to read the duology, you can, but just know that there might be a little bit of a learning curve in terms of the world building and the magic. So I finally read the trilogy last month, and I adore this trilogy. I don't know why it's not talked about more. Maybe because it's older and like people have just read it and forgotten about it, but I feel like there are plenty of series that are popular now that are like 5 years old. So I just don't know why this hasn't been like constantly re-picked up to be talked about. But it is a trilogy that takes place in a world that there are 3 kingdoms. 2 of them are pretty historic enemies, but they are going to join forces because kingdom number 3 is trying to take them both down. All right, and how are they going to ally? By a good old royal marriage. So our main girl is a princess who is being forced to marry the prince of her enemy kingdom, and she's like, no, and she runs away on her wedding day. The book is split into 3 POVs. So we have the princess who has run away. We have the prince who is like, that was what I was gonna do. How dare you steal my thunder? And so he goes off to find the princess to basically be like, shame on you, which is just funny in and of itself. And then we have an assassin from kingdom number 3 who is trying to kill her to make sure that the kingdoms go to war, and then kingdom number 3 can swoop in and just take over everything. Okay? We also have some side characters. We have our princess's best friend, etc. It was so good. Like, for a young adult fantasy, I really loved it. And sort of like with the duology, the books continue to get better. I thought that the final book, the 3rd book, it's the longest book, and I thought that it was hands down the best written. There are some plot twists that I literally put the book down, and I got so angry because I can usually see twists and turns and everything coming a mile away. And this one, I didn't even know to expect one. I'm not going to tell you like when or where. There was just this moment where I turned the page and like my world was rocked. And I was almost angry, and I almost didn't want to continue the book. It was just really good, and I highly recommend it. So that is the Kiss of Deception trilogy. It's also called the Remnant Chronicles. And then followed by the Dance of Thieves duology. I believe Dance of Thieves is on Kindle Unlimited as well. Don't quote me on that, but there we go. Coming in at number 2, you guys know it, it's Legendborn. I read the 2nd book of the series this year. I reread the first one as well. Still love it. This is a series that is inspired by King Arthur. There is demon hunting. It's set in present day, so it also deals a lot with systematic racism in America, specifically in the South. It talks about grief and the loss and the love of mothers. It talks about generational trauma. There are curses. There is romance. There is just so good. So the first book I thought was flawless, The second book had to do some things that like a second book in a series has to do. So there were bits that were slow, there were bits that were complicated, but overall I just felt like I just love this world and the characters so much, and I just can't wait to see where it goes. Tracy's writing is phenomenal. She just like sucker punches you. She has such powerful things to say, and she just says them so well, and I really can't recommend it enough. I'm not talking about it a lot because I feel like I've talked about it so much, but Legendborn, I cannot wait. She better be. I hope that she's like putting the finishing touches on the third one, to be honest, because I need to continue it now. Thanks. And last but not least, why is there another what is going on in my city? Number 1 on my list, go away helicopter, is, you guessed it, Once Upon a Broken Heart and the Ballad of Never After. What do I have to say about this? This is by the same author who wrote Caraval. It is in the same world. It is a continuation of the Caraval series, but following a different character. Stephanie Garber's writing just like leaps. Like if you were to read the first Caraval book and then read The Ballad of Never After, the amount of growth Stephanie Garber has had as a writer is just phenomenal. So if you were kind of like not wowed by Caraval, I implore you to give these a try. So, Once Upon a Broken Heart follows a girl named Evangeline who goes to the Prince of Hearts to ask for a little favor. In this world, there are these things called the Fates, which are sort of like gods. And so she goes to one of them, called the Prince of Hearts, in order to help her out with a little issue. Basically, the love of her life is getting married to her stepsister, which sucks. And she is convinced that he is like under a spell or like something's fishy. So she's like, hey, can you help me out? The Prince of Hearts is not a good dude. All of the gods are like these morally gray, very selfish people. Of course it's not going to go well. Of course something goes wrong. I don't want to say too much, but she ends up going to a whole nother kingdom and she gets swept up into this scheme that the Prince of Hearts has. But then it turns out as the series goes on, seems like the Prince of Hearts kind of loses control of his plan and they both get wrapped up into things. I mean, it's so good. The yearning, the symbolism. This is a book that you need to read multiple times because there will be something mentioned on like page 3 of the first book, and then something happens on page like 500 of this book. Well, no, it's only 300 pages. And then you're like, oh my god, I have to reread the series, and every time they mention like chipmunks, I realize that she means something like, I'm not explaining it well, but if you love fantasies that are so whimsical and feels like a fairy tale, and then there's just like so much yearning, and guys, I loved this. However, the ending of Ballad of Never After is the most twisted and cruel thing I've ever had an author do to me. She is writing book 3. It will come out hopefully in 2023, but the wait is gonna be real rough. So if you would like to read this now and be in pain with me, that's fine. But just know that the ending will wreck you and you will never be the same. So that's my number 1 series that I read in 2022. So this was my very, very, very long video. I read a lot. I felt like a lot of books were sort of in the meh category for me, but that being said, the kind of top 3, 4, 5 series that I read this year were really strong. And as far as the ones that I only read 1 book, I have some that I'm really excited to continue. So it was just a pretty wild year. That is all I've got for you. I've lost my voice. I'm really hungry, so I need to go get lunch. I'm filming this on the 29th of December, so happy New Year to you guys. I haven't been there yet. Hope 2023 is nice. Yeah. Okay, so I will see you guys later. Thank you always for sitting through this. Oh my god. And give me your recs. What haven't I read yet? Give me more. All right? Bye.